guys how you can turn this into this just by using paint strokes and a painterly art style. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete uh, I'm going to delete all of this and just start from scratch because it's really easy. So I'm just going to start with a rock. I usually turn on varying looseness because it already gives that painterly look. So I mean, it's not going to be anything too fancy. Just a simple old rock. And you can turn this down, the looseness. Turn it all the way down if you want, just so you can get more sharp cuts. Just good for like kind of scratches in the rock. So that's probably good enough. Like I could add more detail, but that's not the point of this video. I'm here to turn this like boring sculpture into something that's more lively, just with paint strokes. So I'm gonna go into paint mode and just paint over this. So for rock textures, since it's like hard edges and stuff, I usually use the heavy or just any style that's like hard edged. Um, any will probably do. It just depends on what style you're going for. I like using hexagon for like more cylindrical rocks, if that makes sense. And to start off, I just stamp them in, stamp these shapes in. And don't worry about it being too like messy, because I like personally I like that, and it's just part of the painterly appeal for me. Just make sure it doesn't stick out too far though. Otherwise it'll look too loose. So after I lay out like a general foundation, I usually just go through and add a little bit more detail, not too much though. So I usually just clean this up a little bit. And for corners and stuff, what I like doing is just kind of using different shapes that fit the corner like that. Just gives it a more cracked look. And a big thing for painterly objects is to emphasize like key details, like this crack. Like I wouldn't want to cover this up completely in paint strokes. Okay, so that's looking pretty good so far. After I kind of um, lay out the general textures and the shape, um, I usually just like painting in like different colors and stuff. Like on rocks, I usually like go into blue. And just adding more like liveliness to this. Just subtle things. And again, you don't be afraid to make it too messy. That's part of like what makes it look like actually painterly, in my opinion. That's looking pretty good. It's not the best rock, but it'll do the job. Just group it together. You got yourself a rock. So the next thing I'm gonna do is create grass. So I already got a color wheel for this. I just create like a cylindrical shape. Um, just stamp it down. Not really do anything special with it. Kind of make it irregular. Not add too much like bumps to it because you want a flat ground. So instead of just like turning up the looseness, adding grass texture, and doing that, I mean, it does the job and it's fast. but it doesn't look painterly in my opinion. It's too detailed for me. So I just kind of keep it somewhat loose. Then I just paint over it. Not too much detail. Just so it's like better on performance. But kind of just paint in like a general like grass shape. And you can even add like this kind of grass like popping up. You just stamp this in to add like a little bit more texture to it. Nothing too crazy, but you want a general like painterly look. That's looking pretty good. Yeah. Alright. Just group that together. Can add a little bit of impasto. Kind of give it a more 3D look. There you go. That's painterly grass for you. You want to scale it up and stuff, just so you have less repetition. Flip it around if you want. Let's turn down the impasto a little bit. Yeah, it's looking good. Now next I'm gonna do some bushes. See, with the painterly style, you don't want to go too overboard with the paint strokes. You kind of want to do things that make sense, like that are efficient, right? So for a bush, I just usually stamp down, kind of lump a shape. I just bring this up, not all the way, but kind of like, that's probably good. Something that gives it a loose shape. I use that style. You know what, let's get a more cylindrical shape. Turn up the impasto a little bit. There you go. Now you got a simple bush. And next up for foliage, you can just paint in, like hand paint or hand draw whatever plants you want. So I'm just gonna, for now, I'm just gonna draw some grass. It's probably good enough. So now I got some tall grass, like hand painted tall grass. You know, it's not perfect. But I mean, it's just for demonstration purposes. Just shows like it doesn't take a lot of effort to make something look painterly and good at the same time. So next, I like painting in the impression of an environment, not like duplicating this, making a literal environment, but something that's effective on thermo and looks pretty good. So I'm just gonna paint in some hills. Let's use the stamp. And to make it blend better in the environment, you can just use the brush. Kind of just that looks pretty good. Like, it's obviously not good for like if you want the player to go up here, like you need to do collision and stuff, but for the play area, you can just use normal objects, continue on the play area. This is kind of like the bounds of it. Now next we can add some clouds. So the lesson here is to just kind of like less is more with a painterly style. So you don't want to spend a lot of time on small details. For one, because of performance, it's pretty bad on performance. And two, it just looks better as a painterly style. And so with fog, if I want to do some clouds, I usually turn up the glow to make them more visible. And that gets you these cool cloud shapes. And that's pretty much like the basics of an environment. And the cool thing is everything like kind of blends together. Like, see how if I turned off the paint, like, that kind of, it doesn't look too good. It looks kind of broken up and stuff. But as soon as I turn it on, it looks much more like a painting, and it's much more smooth. So now I can just add some trees if I wanted. So with this style, like, it's really easy to make any object look pretty good. Just with paint strokes. So right here I've got some tree you wouldn't really find in the real world. Just some Dr. Seuss-esque kind of tree. And that's probably good enough. Just turn down the looseness on this part a little bit more. That's looking pretty good. And obviously you can add paint to your sculptures. You don't need to do one solid color and paint in the rest of the colors. So I got this simple tree. I can just bring it up and paint over it. Let's get a brighter color. So that's looking pretty good without much effort, as you can probably see. So I can just add some more color just to give this more depth to it. And you can actually turn up the fade, which is just automatic, like smoothness for your tree, or for anything that matter. And what I usually like doing, turning down the waxiness, because that gives it more of a flat color look. Gives it more of a painterly impression. So here I'm just adding just more color to it. Just giving it more life. I can turn up the impasto just so it gets more form. But that kind of hides this detail though. Let's keep it at that. Now if you want it to blend more into the sculpture, you can turn on the fade. But I don't really like doing that. I like hand fading into the sculpture. It's a little lopsided. It's good. Oh. So I can just group these together. Now I got myself a tree. Really simple, quick tree. We can even add some blending into the environment. So we can get impressionist. Let's bring this up first. Actually, let's use the paintbrush. Looks like there's grass going up the side. It's cool how you can add these details just with paint strokes. That's what I love about this style. There we go. Now, if you want in some more detail on these kind of background exaggerated hills that I made, you can actually just paint out little like cutouts of these objects you have. just duplicate that. Add a little bit of rotation. Can turn down the waxiness to keep its color. And you can just add in an environment. And now you got the illusion of trees in the environment. Which I think looks pretty cool. And for rocks, you can just do the same exact thing. Just kind of get a general cutout of the rock. Kind of get a 3D look to it. You don't need to go too detailed, just because it'll be really far away. So now you got a few rocks. Or at least the impression of a few rocks. And I think that's pretty much it. You can just, anytime, let's turn on X, right? Anytime you can change the mood of the scene. Just make it darker if you want. You can bring down the fog, and it still looks pretty cool. And I did all this in about 30 minutes. Which is, I mean, it's pretty good for something that looks painterly. 2% graphics, or 1%, and 1% gameplay. And you can just duplicate these things as much as you want. Yeah. You can even stamp down any character you want, and it'll be ready to go. Yeah, that's pretty much it. This works with any style. Like, if you just follow the basics for painting objects, and like if one of the big like key things to this style is emphasis on shapes through paint strokes. So instead of just like accurately painting this rock like down to the last detail, you just get these general big shapes that give off the impression and texture of a rock. Yeah, that's pretty much it.